first of all, Howard, what made you decide to run again?
Well, I decided that there were a lot of things I'd like to get done, and 2 years was not long enough. So it takes a while to kind of learn the job, and there's a lot of things that I'd like to see happen, like economic development. I'd like to see more of that taking place. I'd like to see the transportation system improved. And I grew up, my mother never drove. She always rode a bus wherever she needed to go. So it's important. There's a lot of people that need that. And then I want to provide the right resources, whatever is needed for the firemen and policemen. And so we've been working on that, but we got some more we can do.
Okay. What do you bring to the job that would make you a better choice than your opponents?
Well, I bring the last 2 years' experience on the council, but also I've served on a lot of committees and boards for the city. I served on the planning and zoning for over 8 years, so I got that experience. Served on the downtown urban design review board for 4 or 5 years. So I've got a lot of experience with the city. I also served on the school board for 10 years. So being at the top of the line, you might say, on a large entity here in Amarillo, served on the Wayland Baptist board. So I've got a lot of experience that, and I don't know anything about my opponent, what experience he has or anything.
Okay. Just starting with a topic that's been a hot button, the clapping ban during council meetings. What did you learn from that decision? And you know, some people have seen it as you're trying to silence critics. How do you answer that?
Well, I'd say the council didn't really have anything to do with it. We supported the mayor, and she wanted to stop that. She's coming from the viewpoint of an attorney in a court, I think, where you don't do things like that. But that's, she's dropped that, and people clap now when they choose to, and that's not the end of the world. So let them do it.
And what would be the first initiatives you would pursue for a second term?
Well, as I mentioned, economic development. I think I'd like to see more of that happen. I'd love it if we'd get the veterinary school here. That's being worked on to try to get it to happen. We've raised $90 million to build it. Now we need the legislature to fund the operations. So that needs to happen. I'd like to see, I brought up that we've got a Santa Fe depot that a previous council purchased with hopes of getting the Amtrak here, but that's probably not going to happen. And so I'd like to, being a realtor, I can't handle something just sitting there not being used. So we need to figure out a use, and I'm on a subcommittee to study what to do with it. And no decisions have been made, and we're still open to proposals. So that's just a couple of things. But there's no end to economic development things.
Speaking of economic development then, how do you feel about incentives for businesses, and in tandem with that, are the incentives for the Texas Tech Veterinary School worth the cost?
Well, I'd say yes, they are worth the cost. From what I understand, if we can get the veterinary school, and once it's up and operating, Amarillo would receive $75 million of benefit from having that school. That would be people, employees of the school living somewhere, the students living somewhere, and all these people got to buy gasoline and eat, buy groceries. So there's a big benefit to having that. And in conjunction with the Texas Tech Medical School and the pharmacy school. And so having the veterinary school, I think just those three things right there together on the same campus would attract other entities that want to do research in the medical field.
Okay, and your thoughts on incentives for businesses? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think incentives are important. That's what the AEDC does. They tax. That's one of the smartest things the city did, was choose to tax themselves to raise money to attract businesses. And so that's the way the game is played. Other towns, they offer incentives, so it's a competitive field. So it's got to be done. It's got to be appropriate. You've got to get the right number of employees for whatever the incentive is. And so that's all looked at. And ADC looks at it, and they bring proposals to the council, and we have to approve anything they want to do.
Some have claimed the mayor and city council are paying attention to some areas to the detriment of others. North Amarillo and East Amarillo have been brought up as examples. So how do you answer that claim?
Are you saying that people are saying that we're paying too much attention to North Amarillo?
No,
East
I'm
Amarillo?
saying that
Not
they're saying
enough.
some areas are being neglected while maybe too much focus on downtown, that sort of thing.
Well, we've made a concerted effort, the council has, to paying attention to other areas besides downtown. Downtown was a big push, and we're bringing the third catalyst project to a conclusion here pretty quick, the MPEV. But we've also have a plan for the Barrio district, and there's a plan for I went to a meeting last night. San Jacinto is beginning to get a plan, and North Amarillo has a plan. So we're concentrating. We're not saying what to do. We're asking the people that live in that area to say, what do you want done? And so we're promoting other areas. And there's other areas that we could pick on, but we need to it's not just Amarillo, downtown Amarillo.
What, as far as the North Heights plan and the Barrio plan, name some real progress that's been made on those?
Well, I'm not sure there has been a lot of progress other than they've gotten organized. I know in the Barrio they've had these medical facilities. People may not be able to go to doctors frequently enough, so that's being done. Heal the City they've got in San Jacinto, and so that's been a tremendous thing that was started out there. So things like that are being done. It's going to clean up maybe some of the dilapidated properties that can be taken care of. And just the community members taking pride in their neighborhood.
What are your thoughts on the closing of Thompson Park Pool and what happened that let it get so bad?
Well, evidently it was like 87 years old or something like that. So it was long overdue. Maybe the city was not proper in preparing for that. But when the leak occurred, inspections were done, and there were electrical problems, and you get electricity and water, it wasn't a safe deal. It needed to be closed. But the council said we got to replace it. And so plans are being made to do that as soon as that can happen. It can't be by this summer. There's no way this summer. But it needs to be replaced. It was I don't remember the numbers, but a lot of people went there and used that pool. It's only open for like 90 days or something during the summer.
The Texas legislature is considering enacting a property tax cap on local governments. It would require voter approval for tax rate increases of 2.5% or more. What's your position on that, and how would that impact city needs?
Well, the going from 8% to 2.5% is a pretty drastic change. And I think it ought to be a compromise somewhere in the middle, maybe 4 or 5%. We may, if it's 2.5, what's going to happen when we get back to inflation? We've had inflation that was above that in the past, and so we may be voting on the city budget every year if it's at that, and I don't think that's practical. There needs to be local control. We've got one of the lowest tax rates in the state of Texas, maybe the second lowest, and so I think we've shown that we're conservative, and so you're going to take that away from us.
So it removes local control?
Yes.
What public safety improvements have you made, and what more will you try to do?
Public safety, we've added a lot of policemen. Just this fiscal year, we've added 17 police officers. The year before, my first year, we added 6 or 8, something like that. So that's important. We've added body cameras for policemen. That's important. We're building 2 new fire stations as we speak, and another one will be underway pretty quick. So we had a vote by the public, and they, with 7 propositions, and one of them dealt with public safety. And so we've been concentrating on doing that. And there's more that we could do.
What kind of things are you thinking about now?
Well, we need to add more firemen next year. The plan is to we add 5 for this year, 5 the next year, and 5 the next year. And so in the police department, I'm not sure of specific things, but we just got to pay attention to what their needs are. I'm sure their needs are unlimited.
Okay. This council drew some criticism for ending a homeless camp that formed on the northern edge of downtown, and it's since launched the Housing First program, but there's also appears to be a tent city or a tent camp that has popped up near where the first one was. Why the about face and not trying to clear that one out, and talk a little bit about those?
Well, the first tent city, I had reports that there were a lot of laws being broken, drugs being used, and things like that. Now, I understand there's more control with the new tent city, and I've driven by it and I've seen it it's kind of in a forest, if there's a forest in the Panhandle anywhere. But from what I understand, it's better controlled and doesn't have problems like the other one did.
And what efforts is the city making regarding the homeless now?
Well, we encourage homeless to use the facilities that are there. A lot of homeless people don't want to use them, but they're there. So we encourage that. We try to educate people on it, and so there's enough facilities to take care of the homeless.
You received some flack for a comment you made during a discussion about the program the city has to give employment to some homeless people. Remind
me what that was.
The comment was something they were saying they do not hire during the winter because of the cold temperatures and safety and things, and your comment was reportedly that the homeless people ought to be used to the cold, and you thought it might be good to keep that program going year-round. So give me your reaction to, or explain that comment.
Well, it's been a long time since I made that, but if there's jobs that the city can provide, whether it be cleaning up along I-40 or whatever, and the trash comes anytime, so I think that could be done anytime during the year.
Did you mean to phrase it as, the homeless people are used to the cold and could work out in the cold?
No, I don't think that was the case.
Okay.
People I see people out 20 degrees here several days ago.
Okay. Where do you stand? Oh, we've already asked that. What are your thoughts on the utility billing rollout, and why was it kind of messed up?
Well, the city adopted a software package called Tyler, and Tyler was not appropriate to include drainage fees on the water bill. And tenants, my office manages properties, quite a few single-family houses, so the tenants were paying the drainage fee. But when figuring out what other cities do, we're the only one that did that. And so it's the owner that needs to pay that. Now, I'll tell you what my company's planning to do. We haven't implemented it yet, but it'll probably be implemented next month. We manage 200 houses, and we're offering to the owners of those to pay those for them. Not that we'd charge them for it, but we'd pay annually for a year ahead. So they don't have to deal with paying $2.71, writing a check and putting a 55-cent stamp on it. That doesn't make good sense. And so we're offering to do that. We're going to send a letter out in the next few days to the 92 owners that have hired us to manage their property. And we think 98% of them will like doing that. Some of them may want to do it themselves. But the city loves that plan. That'll relieve the problem. But it's the software kind of started being the problem. And a lot of people have gotten these bills. I've got one friend has 9 rent houses. He lives outside the city, but he has 9 houses in the city. And he was concerned and said, well, there's a way to, I gave the telephone number, person in the utility department, they can make it simpler for you.
What's been the reaction from the residents you've talked to? Are they upset about it, or do they acknowledge that those things can happen? What kind of
The
feedback
reaction
do you
they've had in my office is talked with quite a few, is once it's explained what we're planning to offer to them, they like it. It relieves them of having the need to do that.
Okay. Many residents believed that the city should concentrate on civic center improvements rather than a multi-purpose event center and hotel. How do you get the civic center updated, and how do you pay for it?
Well, we've appointed a committee recently to study the civic center deal. It's just had its 50th anniversary. It's old, it's outdated. I've been to several conventions in other towns, and other civic centers are in better shape. And so what they're going to find out, I don't know, but it started out with 5 members on the committee, and they're going to expand that to have quite a few more to really give it a good study. Now, to pay for it, if it comes about that it's recommended we do something, we don't have a lot of money. We're not a rich city. So it would probably be a bond issue to pay for it.
Would we have had the money without the multi-purpose event center?
I think that's a different animal. The community wanted the MPEV, multi-purpose event venue. We voted on that, and they decided that. So we've done that. And April 8th, which is getting very close, is going to be the first of 70 games in Amarillo. So we did what the community wanted there. Now we're at another phase, and it may take a year or more studying the Civic Center. But we have complaints all the time about, well, Lubbock has this event, and we don't have a big enough venue to have things like Lubbock has had. So whether that's going to be a priority or not, that was one of the propositions, one of the 7 that did not pass. So we got to, now it was a pretty rapid from the time it was decided to bring it to a vote and we voted was like 90 days. And so by taking several months or a year to study it, we may get a different answer.
Now that the multipurpose event venue is opening, how will you be monitoring its operations to be sure the city gets what it paid for?
Well, we have a contract that says they got to pay us so much. I believe it's $400,000 a year, and so you paid it or they didn't. But they're a business, and they're going to have a lot of events there, not just baseball. Understand the Colorado Springs has a facility there, and I understand they had over 200 events in Colorado Springs.
And that's the same group that has our
Yes.
stadium leased.
It is. Elmore Sports Group had the one in Colorado Springs. They've got 7 or 8 around the country, and they have the Missions in San Antonio is what they had, and they moved the Missions, the AA team, to Amarillo, and the AAA from Colorado Springs to
So
San
you
Antonio.
expect, I guess, with seeing the kinds of events they do in other places, that they'll keep our stadium busy?
I think they will. I'm excited that one of the churches in town is leasing the facility 2 weeks after the facility opened for the first game, Easter Sunday, 10 a.m. They're going to have a service there.
Interesting. When should city meetings take place, and how can the city get more people to participate? You've taken some criticism for moving the meeting around.
Well, the meeting, we need to kind of pay attention to the council members. They've got some needs themselves. The mayor's full-time. I understand she spends 60, 70 hours a week. All the other council people, they have other jobs. So I think we've come to a compromise. It could change in the future that works for the people now. But whenever you decide to have the meeting, there's going to be a lot of people who won't like it. It doesn't matter when it is. When it was at 5, people couldn't get there. They couldn't get off work in time to get there. It's at 1. 7 was a bad idea, 7 a.m. So we dropped that idea. But another part of it is when it was at 5, there were a lot of staff people. Some of them are salaried, some of them are hourly. So they're like weekly. When you have a meeting weekly, they're asked to stay through the meeting. And we needed not only the top administrators, but other people on the staff to hear what communication is done and the comments that the council makes.
Okay.
So it's a tough issue. We could, if you talk to the people that complain, what time would they want it? And then how many people would want it then? And there'd be a lot that wouldn't want it then. I happen to be fairly flexible. I'm in the real estate business, and I can usually move things around. Can't always, but others may have trouble doing that.
How do you pay for new growth while still maintaining existing infrastructure, and should developers pay more of the cost of that growth?
Well, that's going to be a tough issue. The developer goes out somewhere, and the tradition and the way it's been is they want to do a development pretty far away, and the city in the past has brought the utilities to the intersection of that property, and that's a big cost. And there's an example where the Sam's west of town, the new Sam's, the city couldn't pay for bringing all the facilities to the intersection of that property. So Sam's paid for it. Well, so they could see opening the store would be better than not opening it. So they did that. So there may be a discussion about that to get feedback. But what we need to do, we need to encourage infill development. We've got properties within the city limits, the utilities are already there, and we need to encourage development in those areas.